Everyone is vulnerable to being pinned when life plays hardball, whether it is a physical or mental health condition. No one can stand alone. For those who are not pinned, appreciate that it could be you or a loved one someday. So when you see a chance to help someone, please do. They are not weak, they are pinned. Even a slight hand up and a listening ear can begin seriously lightening the load, change, or save a life. Help end stigma. Move from being pinned to purpose. Time for a hand up.
There we go. Welcome to the Pinned2Purpose Podcast. It's a huge honor for me to be joined today with a great friend, Ernest Gavor, who is calling in from Accra, Ghana, and to share his story with everybody here. I just wanted to say at the outset, I did have this small clip from our website to begin the explainer video on Pinned2Purpose. And the reason I'm doing this and inviting amazing people like Ernest on is to try to help lessen the load, the weight on people with mental health conditions and challenges, and give them a hand up on their healing journeys by making sure, this is one more platform to remind people they are not alone. People have been through incredibly different things, and it's human to be pinned, so to speak, by the weight of what you're carrying. So hopefully these stories are inspirational. People can learn from them and meet incredible people and be reminded that there's always new chapters ahead, even if you're struggling with right now. So Ernest, it's fantastic to see you. Thanks so much for taking time. And you have an incredibly eclectic bio. And it's almost, I have to write it down to remember all the things you do, because otherwise I wouldn't remember them all. But I mean, you're an innovator, you're a founder, you're a speaker, you're a futurist, you're involved in EdTech as an enabler. You've done so many things. And so why don't I pass it over to you just to tell us a bit more about yourself, and then we'll get into the story of our time together in Ghana and some of these incredible experiences, and obviously your own initiative, which was founded, unfortunately, based on the passing away of your sister, an incredibly difficult time, but that you turned into a purpose. So over to you, Ernest, just to share with people a little bit about who you are and your background.
Sure, Geoff. Very excited to be here and to see you again, to chat with you. Friends from way back, and always a pleasure to chat, speak with you, and this time probably doing it in front of cameras for others to get a bite of as well. So as you mentioned, I've done quite a varied range of things in the past couple of years on my time on Earth. I've done, in recent times, I've been doing more on the EdTech space, or in the EdTech space. My previous engagements were also tech related. So I started off as a developer, someone who loved to create solutions with technology. So the initiative you mentioned slightly, I'm sure we'll get into that story, was a couple of years back when I tried to solve the challenge that got to do with getting or incentivizing individuals to volunteer to donate blood to stock the National Blood Bank. I did that for a while. I'm sure later in the conversation we'll get into the details. And then I moved on to more now providing support to other people who are trying to innovate. So in the past couple of years, I've been doing stuff more on the startup space, either running a co-working space, running an incubation program, or running an acceleration program, and more recently doing more of coaching for startups and founders who have started companies, young, trying to go to markets, trying to innovate, trying to raise funds, trying to validate their product and stuff like that. So in recent times, I've been doing more of coaching for founders with a bit of focus on the EdTech space, providing a lot of support for people who are providing solutions and innovation to use education to cause change in our world.
Fantastic. No, it's amazing. So why don't we get towards how we actually met, which is really a wonderful story, and some of the great times we spent together. And so my story, but a lot of people viewing it wouldn't. So very quickly, I'm a huge fan of the Peace Corps in the United States, when that was started. I'm a huge fan of the programs, including Crossroads International in Canada, where I had a chance to work as a volunteer in Togo, West Africa, when I was 20. Incredible experiences, learning through cross-cultural exchange and respecting our common humanity despite differences in cultures and history. So I worked in Togo in 1986. I did have malaria at that time, which threw me off for many years, and it took me 30 years to go back. So I was a bit slow, very slow, but I was always involved in programs. And then
just before you continue, for those of us who live in this space, getting malaria is not that it's not so much of a problem, but it's for somebody who doesn't live in the tropics, malaria could be severe, but we get it. It cures or clears in few days and you are fine to go. But it's very severe. So that must have been quite an unpleasant situation for you.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you clarify that, because it is all different experiences people have. For me, it was a very difficult one. I was very sick, but I'm glad you're clarifying that, because your immune system, toughness for people living locally and having to deal with it for all the time is very different. Anyway, so I'll come right ahead to this. So as a result, having an interest in Africa and international development, I volunteered for a group called Enablis, which tries to connect Canadian business people with social entrepreneurs in Africa. And that's where I was introduced to you. So we worked together on a project for a couple of years, but why don't I pass it over to you? Because again, it was a very moving, very powerful, very impactful project, and based on, unfortunately, a tragedy that your family had experienced.
Yeah, so I mean, it was really an opportunity, or it was quite should I say serendipity, or whatever the forces made it to be, for us to meet when I was sort of struggling on how to solve a particular solution, or solve a particular situation. So this is how it all came about. My big sister, elder sister, went down with leukemia and was hospitalized for quite a prolonged period of time. During that period, there was need for several rounds of blood transfusion, and at every time that there was need for transfusion, because of her blood type, and this is very common in our hospitals, there was always a struggle to get a match for her to do the transfusion on time. So that placed, so per the way the system works, when it's time to do, it's the duty of the family to provide the blood, not entirely the duty of the hospital. So if the blood is available, the hospital will do their side by doing an infusion. So during that period, it was always a struggle trying to get somebody to donate blood to match her type for transfusion to be done on time. And I recall there was a particular episode for the transfusion where it became, because we had moved her from a regional hospital to a tertiary hospital in the national capital, Accra, called Kolibu. And at that point, there was a point that there was need for transfusion, and all attempts to get blood in the national capital failed. Her match failed. And of course, when it's a health situation, time is taken. So the family had to start running around. Eventually, we got a family acquaintance who matched and was willing to donate. But this was several kilometers away in Ho in the Volta region. I mean, you visited that town, that city as well. So the transfusion had to be done there. And unfortunately, the way the logistics work between the hospitals, it was going to be very, very tough to have the hospital arrange delivery. That has changed now. Now they are doing deliveries. Back in the days, there were no drone deliveries in Ghana. So it was difficult for the hospital to arrange a delivery between the two hospitals. So my elder brother had to pick the blood that was donated several kilometers in public transportation in an ice chest. In an ice chest with some few ice blocks because of the climate conditions, travel on public transport until he got to Accra and sent it to the hospital for it to be used. And of course, that meant that we had lost some time, and had to be done at least twice during her hospitalization. So we went through all this stress every time trying to find blood for her for the doctors to do the transfusion. Unfortunately, eventually we lost her, even though the doctors tried their best. Eventually, we lost her. But one of the key takeaways for me from that episode was how hard it was to get blood available for transfusion for those who were hospitalized and needed it urgently. And this story is not just an isolated situation of my sisters. It's a challenge for most hospitals in Ghana, where they struggle to have a blood match for patients who are on admission. So, but I didn't know about this until my sister got caught up in the situation. So, and at that point, I was already out there providing technology solutions for institutions. Had done quite a lot of support for all kind of institutions who were trying to integrate technology in their operations and building automation system, building websites, doing training for institutions and all those things. So I thought, why don't I try to use the skills I had or I have to bring some solution or bring some relief to patients who will be in the same situation that my sister was before we unfortunately lost her. So I put some few friends together who were in tech as well, and a couple of weeks down the line, we came up with a technology solution that we called Moja, MOJA then. And the whole concept was simple. I mean, now AI and stuff are all out there, so we were quite ahead of our time. We were then trying to use artificial intelligence, blockchain, and other technologies to try to do some prediction of where various blood types were needed in the system, and also to create incentives for individuals to volunteer to donate blood.
And what year was this again?
This should be somewhere. I think we started from somewhere around
2014 or something. 15.
Yeah, I think we started from like 2010. That was when we started.
Okay.
So I started tossing ideas from 2002, actually.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, but I think we came up with the solution sometime 2000 and
As I met you I visited in 2016. That's when I came with two of my kids.
Good. So I think we started working on it around 2010,
okay.
And by 2015 thereabout, it was out there. Right. We had put together something workable. So around 2015, I think we launched in 2015, and of course, it took some time to engage with the system to make sure that the right stakeholders were engaged, and then the idea worked for them. So I think 2015 thereabouts, we probably started testing markets, and it was loved because apparently many people had faced that situation, so they knew that some technology intervention was very critical. So the National Blood Service then were on board. We had corporate partners that were supporting. We had won several awards locally and internationally because of innovation. So we went out there, put it out there, had individuals and the system use it. So for the period that we had run that project, it had boosted blood donations for around 48% for the system, because we're using all kinds of creative means to give people incentives to then volunteer blood or to volunteer become regular blood donors, and they loved it. We gave them incentives. They had free health screening. They were interfacing with doctors. You get badges on the app. Your donation count will be there. So we use a series of things to incentivize individuals to volunteer to donate blood, and that had brought some improvement in terms of individuals voluntarily going to donate. And the blood bank was excited as well, because now they were getting more voluntary donors in the pool, and their stocks had improved significantly. So that was for that particular innovation, and I was excited because we were using, my friends and I that were building the technology with me were using the skill we had to solve something that was very, very, very critical, because it's a matter of life. If unfortunately there's no substitute for blood. If you need blood transfusion or blood product transfusion, I'm not too sure if there are probably now there are some substitute, but then there was nothing else. If you needed blood to be transfused or you needed blood product transfused, it had to come from one human into the patient's body. So there must be a voluntary donor, preferably, for it to be used by the medical people to assist whoever needed it. So that's how it all happened. From more of a personal tragedy, losing my sister, then coming up with something that then helped other people who were in similar situations to get some level of help and support.
Yeah, no, amazing. And I'm sure that she would be incredibly proud of all of the people you've been able to help and save lives, and bringing your talent and your friends' talent to create Moja. So thanks so much for doing that. I was very proud to be able to be a mentor, to try to, give you some different thoughts and work together a bit on that project. But it's an incredible story, and a powerful one in terms of, flipping and reframing tragedy into something, very uplifting and powerful.
So,
I wanted to talk about it, just a few little stories here, and maybe we can exchange them. I'm hoping the camera can see this, because this is
oh, you still have this? You still?
I still have it. That's right. So
Yeah,
this
I
is
remember this bike. I remember this bike very well. I remember this
this
bike
is
from Ghana.
exactly, this is the symbol of Pinned2Purpose. It's in our logo for two reasons, but it's only thanks to you that I have it, because when I brought two of my kids to Ghana to visit you, you took us around on a tour of the southern part of the country, and we spent time in many, many places. But among the places we went to, in Accra, in the capital, we went to meet some artists or artisans, and one of them was a garbage picker who would go to garbage dumps and find discarded pieces of trash, as you can see here. And sorry, there's Nescafe can lid, and there's aerosol tops, and all sorts of things. But he made a beautiful red bike out of it that I fell in love with, and I bought this, and I was with you. And so the symbolism to me is, these are shattered pieces that have been put together into something more beautiful and lasting. And I think it's again, a metaphor for everyone who at different times has shattered pieces, but we can always remember, with the help of others, we can't do it alone, but with the help of others, you can aspire to, new beginnings, a new chapter, and a more beautiful future. So I want to ask you to comment a bit more too, because, you have met, and I know you are even trying to reach the artist or artisan who made this, but just your thoughts on that bike in particular, and the person who made it.
Look, Geoff, I'm so excited to see that bike again. And before I speak about the bike, let me speak about how exciting it was to have a mentor travel all the way from Canada to visit you in Ghana. It was, I think I was the only, in that program, I was the only one who's in the Enablis program. I was the only one whose mentor came all the way to come and visit. And he came with your two impressive kids, and we had some good time touring around. And I think the bike was fun. I mean, we did probably, we'll go into the stories. We did great things. Apart from the bike, we met the legend Azumah Nelson, and went to all kinds of interesting places. But back to the bike, I think it's extremely symbolic for somebody to see so much use in something that is like not useful. So these are disposed cans of beverages. I think there's a coffee can, some aerosol top, and other pieces. So someone who, with no disrespect, you may think is just trying to make ends meet, create something so wonderful from essentially trash. This is garbage. This is something that was disposed by other people, but somebody picks that up and it creates something so beautiful out of it, which you have kept for close to 10 years now. And I think that is so interesting that there's so much use in something that looks with garbage, useless, for lack of better words. You can't use so much use in something that looks useless. So for me, that bike is quite symbolic, maybe for the kind of work you are doing now as well, where there's a moment where, as individuals, we run into difficulties from whatsoever reason. It could be mental health, it could be all kinds of challenges, and you may be at your lowest ebb ever. But that really is not the end. probably just like the example of the materials from which that beautiful bike was made from. They were in a garbage can, and somebody found them, picked them out, and created something so useful. And they've traveled several kilometers and they are still alive. So to say that bike is still alive almost 10 years after the cans were disposed by somebody else. So I find that whole story to be very meaningful for us as humans, especially when we are at that point in our lives where we feel so down, we feel like probably it was coming to an end, and we just like what the garbage picker did. We may need somebody to give us that helping hand, pick us from that situation, and make us feel more useful or useful again. So I feel that connection with the Pinned2Purpose initiative that you are doing these days, where at a point in I think we all face it. At every point in time, you may have a situation that pins you somewhere, but in there lies the opportunity for that situation to be converted to some purpose, only if you can lift your head and see, or if you have somebody who could help you, give you that helping hand out of the garbage or the trash can sort of, and help you rejuvenate and see some life. So I think that bike has so much meaning. I can go on and on and on talking about the bike, but probably let me get back to you so we don't get the conversation dragged.
Sure. No. Well, I think you mentioned Azumah Nelson, so I want to go there because this is quite a story, and I want you to explain a few things for our viewers here. But we did get to go to the home of the chairman of Enablis in Ghana. He invited us for a wonderful dinner. Myself, you, my two kids that were with us. And I remember the conversation when he was asking us about Ghana and things that we knew about it. The conversation went to sports. I did remember watching Azumah Nelson win like World Boxing Championships on television years ago. And I knew that he was, a great Ghanaian boxer. And then I looked up online after and saw that some people say pound for pound, he may be the best boxer in African history. But the funny thing, and then I'll pass it over to you in a second. The funny thing is, so our host said, so do you know any Ghanaian athletes? And I said, well, I know Azumah Nelson. And the way I remember it, he's saying, oh, you know Azumah? And I'm like, well, I don't literally know him, but I know who he is. And he's like, oh, you know Azumah? And I said, well, I don't literally know him, but I know who he is. Yeah. And he was laughing. Remember, we were all together. He was laughing.
Sure.
He picked up his phone. He said, just a minute. And he's phoned Azumah and he reached him and he said, hey, Azumah, there's a guy from Canada who knows you and he's with his kids. Is there any chance you can meet him? And so fortunately enough, I got to go with you and my two kids. And, it was the last day before we had to leave. But there's an interesting story there too, because he did know Muhammad Ali. And so there's a couple of links there that they continue with the red bike. But just to pass it to you for what you remember of that, and also, to talk a bit about who Azumah Nelson is and how well known he would be in your country.
Well, I think Azumah Nelson is a national icon. We adore him. We probably the greatest sportsman Ghana ever had and may ever have. I was super young when in his days of championship when he was, but I could recall how an Azumah Nelson boxing match gripped the entire nation. It was like a national event. And typically he would fight in time zones that were not very comfortable with our time zone. But you see families, the streets will be busy until sometimes 4 a.m. So people stay awake until like 4 a.m. or 1 a.m. when the boxing match happened. And he's celebrated. He's a celebrated sportsman. He's a national icon, a very inspirational figure, well respected. So, and for me, that day was very significant because I have known the legend Azumah Nelson all my life. I never dreamt of, physically meeting him, going to his home or meeting him personally, getting to shake hands, get to have conversation with him. I never imagined that would happen. So somehow serendipity, in some moment of serendipity, you mentioned in the conversation, and Mr. Harris, I think that was his name, just said, oh, he's a good friend, and he picks the phone and calls, and he picks. And that should tell me they were good friends as well. So he picks, and then the next day we're with him having a conversation. So yeah, that was a high point to me as well. And Azumah is loved, is celebrated. And I'm sure you will go back to the connections between all these things and how much meaning it has for you, the Muhammad Ali story and all those things. But personally, for me, it was such a significant moment in my life, getting to meet a national legend of Azumah Nelson's caliber. I was really excited, and how fast it happened. It was just a conversation the night before over dinner, and then the next day we were with him having another conversation. So it was quite exciting for that to happen.
You know, it makes me think too, like you have to put things out into the universe, and there was no expectation of anything there. I had no idea he knew him, but about stand up to people on their maybe we've got there's a little bit of a blip maybe on the video, but all I'm trying to say is you're stuck. For people who are listening, you know, we've been there. I mean, Ernest talked about his sister passing away, and the how he turned that into purpose. As an example, I started this myself because I managed to be hospitalized for 5 weeks years ago when my first business didn't succeed. So we've all been there in different things, and we all will be as human beings. But to put out into the universe and ask, and to reach out to people and ask, and if you have dreams, you have ideas, you throw them out there. I didn't have expectations, but it was only because I mentioned his name that all of a sudden that serendipity took place. I want to connect this to a couple of other things, because you know, the red bike, just for the, you know, people watching, and you'd see it on the website, has another link. And it's amazing to me that, again, Azumah Nelson knew Muhammad Ali. And so, and another interesting thing, sorry, just before I go there, and Ernest, I may not have told you this, or you may not have seen this, but I looked it up online, and Muhammad Ali actually passed away during the month when I was in Ghana. So it wasn't the same day, really? But that was the same month. Yeah. So, but what happened to me is, and this is part of the dual meaning of the red bike in Pinned2Purpose and in the logo. 1 year after this, when I, you know, was with Ernest and met Azumah Nelson, another one of my sons and I went on a musical tour in the United States, and went to Cleveland to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Nashville to the Country Music Hall of Fame, and in between went to Louisville, Kentucky, stayed with a friend. And we went to the Muhammad Ali Museum. And so people may not know this story, and you can see it on the Muhammad Ali Center website. But Muhammad Ali, when he was Cassius Clay at 12 years old, his destiny was changed by what they call as a red bike moment. His parents gave him a red Schwinn bicycle. It got stolen outside of a trade show in Louisville. And when he went to the police, he told the officer that he wanted to find and beat up the person who stole it. And the officer happened to be Sergeant Joe Martin, who was a top boxing coach, and told him, look, well, you know, you better learn to fight, and we don't want you to do that, but we're going to try to help you find your bike, and then come to the gym with me, because, you know, you got to get that energy out, and you should learn to defend yourself. And so the story goes from there. But that red bike moment changed his life. If his red bike was not stolen, the odds are there was no reason he ever would have got into boxing. Nobody would have ever heard of him. And the greatest, you know, the destiny for him to become the greatest was dramatically changed just by this one red bike moment. So just quickly, the symbolism in the Pinned2Purpose logo, in addition to starting and being based on this wonderful bike that our friend, the garbage picker that we met, made out of shattered pieces, is also the aspiration everyone can have for a red bike moment. At the center, they encourage people from around the world to share their stories of a major setback that transformed their future. And so that's the hope that everyone can have at any time. It doesn't matter. It's like there's always that hope, but it can't be done alone. And, you know, that's the symbolism of the two in purpose. It's at least other people helping you. So I just wanted to share that, because to have you on this podcast, Ernest, is incredibly meaningful to me. You're a great friend, a great person. But that story is foundational into, you know, the kind of the drive and the message here.
You know, Geoff, that story is very profound. It strikes me that the great Muhammad Ali that we know became great because somebody actually stole his bike. But for the stealing of the bike, probably the world would have lost a Muhammad Ali, such a phenomenal, inspirational figure. So, I mean, that just goes back to buttress the point that probably those not so pleasant things that happen to us are just probably, if you believe in destiny or if you believe in God, if you whatever you believed in, that's probably God, destiny, or it's just a way for you to discover or become exactly who you are meant to be, or to then fulfill the purpose for which you are on earth. So Muhammad Ali needed his bike stolen, which is not pleasant, but that means at the point in everybody's life, probably you may need your bike stolen as well. If you don't get your bike stolen, you may not become a Muhammad Ali. So for me, the lesson from the story just shared is for us to probably accept those moments in our lives where our bikes get stolen. Our bikes get stolen, and we should accept it and find the purpose in it. And the other bit that you mentioned is the opportunity to speak to somebody, because Cassius Clay then had to speak to somebody who sort of directed his path, and that's why he became a great person. So I think as a people, as humanity, we need to create those opportunities for people to be able to share their frustrations, to discuss their stolen bike moments, so that they can be guided to find their purpose. So I think the role of the police officer, it's equally very, very significant in the life of Muhammad Ali, and of course probably the thief as well. We should probably celebrate the thief as well, who stole his bike.
There's a lot of irony in that, and your sister's life was stolen also as well, prematurely, which is a great tragedy. But out of it, I'm sure she would be and is so proud of what you did. And we all have to face tragedy. We are all mortal, which is another reminder for all of us to hopefully celebrate life and not get caught up in conflicts whenever we can reach out in community and shared projects. It goes on and on, but I don't think what you've just said is really deeply meaningful and moving to me to hear that. I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to say, but I think it may even be just great to end it off, given exactly what you said, because you're doing amazing things now. I'm very, very happy that you're a lifelong friend, and we come from very different backgrounds, but it's another just one of billions of examples out there of friendships that just are about humanity and transcending any other garbage, that like our friend, the garbage picker, who that he took this from a pile of garbage, and that not everything from the garbage could have been easily put back together, but there's always shattered pieces that can't, and there's always hope.
Probably just to end that, there's always hope. We all need to learn to pick the pieces together, mend them, and move on, and look forward to tomorrow. There's always a better tomorrow, as they say. And sometimes in our lives, as they say, the night is darkest just before it's daybreak. So it's darkest at dawn, but just moments after that, the sun comes and it looks brighter. So we all just need to learn to accept those moments, and when it's not the best, seek help, and probably give help where we are in a capacity to do so, to lift others up from their tragedy, so they can discover themselves, just like all of us have done. Muhammad Ali's, all the short stories you've shared today. So let's be each other's keepers, support each other, give hope, and certainly everybody needs to keep an eye on this podcast. And I think you're doing a great job, and look forward to listening, watching more of the podcast and your fantastic lineup of guests that will be coming on. Thank you. Thank you very, very, very much for having me.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Ernest. It's always a great pleasure. Take care of yourself.
Sure. Bye.